Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kari, and today I'm going to be talking about the worst books that I read in 2024. Overall, 2024 has been an amazing reading year. I have found so many new favorite books this year, but when you read as many books as I do, just statistically, you're going to come across some books that you really don't like, and those are the books that I'm going to be talking about today. I'm not going to spend too much time on each of these books because I don't want to rip into them, but I do want to tell you which ones I don't like, why I didn't like it, what it's about, that type of thing. So first I'm going to talk about Crooked Plow by Itamar Vieira Jr. And this is translated from the Portuguese, and I read this because it was longlisted for the International Booker this year, and it actually went on to be shortlisted as well. And what made me want to read this is that in the blurb it says that these two young sisters, they find this mystical knife under the bed of their grandma, and that they decide to taste its power, and that what they do in that moment changed their lives forever. And that sounded really intriguing to me, these girls messing around with a knife, something violent's going to happen, that sounds really interesting. Unfortunately, that happens literally at the beginning of the book, and the rest of the book follows them as they grow up and different people throughout the town that they live in, and I just didn't care anymore. I was more interested in this pivotal moment of their lives, and yes, it does affect them the rest of their lives for sure, but it starts to involve a bunch of other people and focusing on the dynamics of the townspeople, and I just didn't really care. It took me so long to read this book. I did not like it. We have yet another prize book to make this list, and it's And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott. I read this because it was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction this year, and this is about a woman who just had a baby, and basically she's suffering from postpartum depression, but in a unique way. She's hearing voices, and I love a story about postpartum depression and spiraling and the mental state that some women can be in after they have children. I love those themes in a book, so I really thought I was going to like this, but unfortunately the spiraling that she went into, it just didn't get dark enough for me. I mean, I'm thinking of another book that I read this year, Soldier Sailor, which dealt with the theme way better than this one did, and actually I read Soldier Sailor also because of the Women's Prize for Fiction this year, and it just dealt with this theme a million times better. It was so much better written as well, and this one, it was much more magical, magical weird things were happening to her in her depression, and I just couldn't get into it. And also that element of it took so long to get into that. I don't know, it's just way too long. It is really long too, and it should have been edited down. That definitely would have helped this book as well. So yeah, I had high hopes for this because it's definitely a theme that I love in a book, but it just wasn't executed the way that I like. Next, we have Pink Slime by Fernanda Trias, and this is in translation from the Spanish. This is a post-apocalyptic horror book where animals are no longer able to be eaten because they have too much disease and it's just not safe to eat them anymore, and food supplies are really diminishing, and it's not safe to go outside because the thing that has been affecting the food sources for the animals and everything is this kind of fog or mist that comes in, and it's really, really dangerous. People have to stay inside when it comes in, and then because the food sources are so bad, this company has created something called Pink Slime, which is just a nutritious, disgusting food to eat because there's nothing else to eat. And I just thought that that sounded really, really good. But unfortunately, even though this is a pretty short book, I mean, this is a small book this way, but also it's short. It's really not that long, but it took me over a month to read because I just could not get into the story. I did not care about the characters. It really relies on you caring about the characters. The main character is taking care of this little boy, and you really need to care about them to continue in the story, and I just didn't. And like I said, this is supposed to be a horror story, and it just wasn't leaning into the horror aspects, which it totally could have. Everything was there for it to lean into the horror, but it didn't. And so yeah, I was just bored. I didn't care about the characters. I was disappointed because the plot had a great setup. It really could have gone somewhere, but it just didn't. Next is the only book that I DNF'd this year, and that's Don't Call It a Cult by Sarah Berman. This is a nonfiction about her experience being in a cult, and I was listening to this on audiobook, and I really enjoyed listening to audiobooks about people's experiences in cults, growing up in cults, leaving cults, and so that's what I was expecting from this audiobook. But something that was difficult about this book, because I was listening to it and I didn't have a physical copy or anything to follow along, is that there were so many names. They were using so many people's names. So it's nonfiction, right? And there were so many people involved, which that makes sense. You need to mention the people who are involved in this story. story. I get that, but there were just so many people and I could not keep them straight without having visuals in front of me. I'm a very visual person. And normally, I mean, audiobooks are fine for me. I really do enjoy audiobooks, but for some reason, this particular book, there were just so many names and I could not keep them straight. It really took away from the story for me because I didn't know who she was talking about. Like going back and forth between all these different people, I just gave up. Like I said, this is the only book that I DNF this year. Maybe it would be better if you're reading it physically. You can keep all the people straight better, but I just gave up on it. Next is another nonfiction and it's Thunderclap by Laura Cumming. And I read this for the Women's Prize for Nonfiction this year. It was the very first nonfiction prize for them this year. And when the long list came out, I was in the middle of reading The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt and was loving it. And then this book was longlisted and it's about the artist of the real Goldfinch painting because that artist actually died in an explosion in Delft in the Netherlands. And so this book was marketed to be about that author and what happened to him. And I just thought that it was really meant to be for me to read this book after reading and loving The Goldfinch so much. And I just thought it would be really fun to read this right away. So I did pick this up right after reading The Goldfinch. Oh, and on the back, you can see that it has The Goldfinch. This is the painting that the Donna Tartt book is based off of. But in the end, this book, it's about the author of that painting a little bit, like barely, but it's also about a bunch of other Dutch artists. And it's also kind of a memoir of the author. So it's really two things in one. So it's the memoir of the author and her relationship with Dutch art, but then also like a history of Dutch art, including Carl Fabricius, who is the artist of the Goldfinch painting. So while I was expecting a book only about Carl Fabricius and the Goldfinch and the explosion that killed him, that's not what this book is. Like, it's really, like, that's Carl Fabricius, this is the Goldfinch, like, it's really marketed to be like, this is a book about him and this painting, and it's not. It's not. It's about a bunch of Dutch artists and the author. I do think if you know that information going into this and you're still interested, that you would like it, but it's just not what it marketed itself to be. Also, if you're interested in Dutch art, I do think that you would like this as well. But again, it's not only about Carl Fabricius, so yeah, take that information and do with it what you will, but I didn't like this. I was so bored. It's not what I was expecting. Next on this list is a manga that I read. It's Orange by Ichigo Takano, and I was looking for some more shoujo to be reading, and this one comes up a lot that people really like it. And so I read the first volume and I didn't really like it. I found it to be too immature, that I think for younger readers that they would like it better. One thing that I did like about this story is that it goes back and forth between the main characters in school. I think that they were in high school, maybe middle school, maybe, I don't remember. They were still in school, younger than university, and then there's another timeline of them being older and kind of coming back together to discuss something that happened to them when they were younger in school. And I did like the plot line of them being older and coming back together, but the part when they're in school, I mean, I get it, they're in school, they're going to act young, that it's going to seem immature. I get that maybe that played into it, why I found it so immature, but it was just too much for me. Like, I just didn't care about it. I found it too immature. I didn't care to go on, and I'll just continue on my journey to find more shoujo manga that I do like. Next is one that I just recently talked about in my November wrap up, so I'll keep this kind of short, but it's Audition by Ryo Murakami. Again, if you want more details about why I didn't like this book, check out that November wrap up. But basically, this is a horror book about a man who's recently widowed, and his best friend is like, I'm a famous movie producer, let's act like we're casting for a new movie for me, and you can choose one of the women who come to the casting to be your new wife. So that's the main setup of the book. However, I wasn't surprised by anything that happened in the book because the blurb gives everything away. And the fact that the blurb gave everything away for a horror book, I mean, the point is to be surprised by the horror and the shocking things that happened. And I mean, the blurb gives everything away. So I didn't like this, unfortunately, but I will give Ryo Murakami another chance because I did like one of his other books a lot. So I'm not giving up on this author, but I wouldn't recommend this one. Next, we have The Only One Left by Riley Sager. You probably already know what this one is about, so I'll keep it short. But basically, this woman is hired to be like a live-in caretaker for this woman who a lot of years ago, I don't remember how many years, 30 years ago or something, she was accused of murdering her own family, like her parents and her sister. And basically, she never went to jail for it, that there's a lot of rumors about her. And so now the main character is working for this woman and she's trying to figure out, did this woman actually do what she was accused of doing? I don't think that this is a hot take because I think everybody agrees that Riley Sager is super hit or miss, but I just found this to be way too long. It drug out way too long. Like, it could have been really good because like the plot is an interesting setup. I thought that was interesting, and at certain points I did care about what was going to happen next, but overall it was just too long. It drug out for way too many pages. It should have been edited down. So yeah, this is more that I was really disappointed in it because it could have been a lot better than it was, but it wasn't horrible by any means, but I just didn't enjoy it. So those were the worst books that I read in 2024. I would love to hear from you. What are the worst books that you read this year so I know to steer clear from them? Definitely let me know, and I'll talk to you again next time. Bye.